Hello. Hi. Thank you guys for coming. We are so glad that you're here. We're gonna do our program in a couple of pieces. I'm gonna introduce Sandra Flip now, and she's going to speak to you guys. And she's our keynote speaker. We are so thankful to have her here. As I think everybody knows, she has played a great role in the women's rights movement, and I think outrage surrounding the way that she was treated might have sparked a little bit in every one of us that's in this room. We're extremely thankful that you are here. And without further ado, I will introduce Sandra Flip.
Hello, ladies. I want to say thank you for the kind introduction, and gentlemen as well, whoever the gentleman as well. Thank you for the kind introduction, and I want to also thank Karen for all of the work that she and her crew here in Virginia. There are too many of you to name. I know you're all collectively working together. Thank you all for what you've done to bring together the anniversary celebration today. You know, it takes a lot of work to put all of this together, so thank you. You know, and to the rest of you who are watching at home and who are here, I want to say happy anniversary. And congratulations, because you have made it a year and you are stronger and growing and stronger than ever. So happy anniversary and congratulations. I was, thinking back over the last year, because it's your 1 year anniversary, and reflecting on what has been an interesting year. I think that's probably the best adjective to use, the most diplomatic adjective to use. It's, a year ago, I was still in law school. I was in the midst of all of this media craziness, and I know all of you were beginning a very long fight. And now I'm in Los Angeles. I'm a practicing attorney now, representing victims of human trafficking, and I'm continuing the fight that all of us are engaged in. I'm doing a lot of social justice advocacy work, traveling around the country, trying to inform and engage and activate folks, and I'm also doing legislative advocacy in Sacramento and back here in DC at times. So it's nice to see that all of us are still in this together, just the way we started out. And it's nice to actually be able to join you, because a year ago, there were times when I wanted to be able to come to Virginia and join, because you were all doing amazing work, standing up against some really terrible threats to women's reproductive rights here in Virginia, and I had to be studying for exams, which was not where I wanted to be at those moments, I assure you. But as we think back over this year, I think we have to remember some of the amazing victories we've had, because they were hard fought. But we've accomplished a lot in a year. We passed the Violence Against Women Act, finally. It's a very long fight, but we got there. And we got there because we stood together with allied communities. We stood with the LGBTQ community and refused to leave them behind in the fight. And we stood with Native women and made sure that they had the protections that they needed. And I know some of you worked very hard to influence some major elections in this country, elected record numbers of women to the House and the Senate and legislature, and also elected a lot of champions for women, men who will be allies and who care about women and will stand with us on the issues of our health, our employment, on all of the questions that we're faced with. So it's been quite a year. But, there have been, let's not forget that we've been fighting for healthcare access in many ways over this year. I firmly believe that all of us speaking up and raising our voices is what saved the Affordable Care Act's contraception access policy. I think we were at a particularly scary moment a little over a year ago, and that we can all pat ourselves on the back for accomplishing a lot and making sure that we still have that policy. And we still have some court battles yet to fight, but we're going to keep fighting. We know that. And we're already seeing improvements in women's health because of what we've accomplished over the last year. So again, pat yourselves on the back. And I know, yes, go ahead. But I know that it hasn't all been victories over the last year, especially especially here in Virginia. There have been fights for the trap laws, and across the country, we're facing some really tough challenges, especially in the areas of reproductive rights and reproductive justice. And that is why I am just very, very honored to be in the room here with activists from Virginia. I grew up in a conservative area, and I have a little bit of experience facing down conservative opponents and tough opponents. A little, not the least of which is my family. So I have deep respect for those of you here and across the country who stand up even when it's a tough uphill fight in a state where the legislature isn't always on your side and isn't always listening, and you continue to be there fighting for women every day. Because whether you're going to win this particular battle or not, you know that women's voices have to be heard. And they have to be part of the conversation. And that if we keep going, eventually we will prevail in these battles. So thank you for being the voices that do that in really tough fights. And you know, because I get to be in the public eye, I have a lot of people come to me and say, you know, you did something that was very brave, and thank you so much for what you did. And I sort of say, okay, but really what we have to recognize is that what we accomplished this year, we all accomplished together. Because it's a lot easier for me to be brave when I know that all of you are at my back. And trust me, you're not a group of people I recommend messing with. So you're the people I want to have at my back. And so on a personal level, I thank you for the support that you provided me, the way you came together in the spring, related to some of the things that were happening with me, but I think related to what was happening to women across this country on a broad scale. But I just want to make sure we all remember that the things that we accomplished this year, we did because we did it together, because we were all brave enough. We were all strong enough to speak out. And we stood together and fought. And we can make wonderful things happen when we do that. But sometimes we forget, and sometimes we get tired, and we have to remind each other. So that's our commitment, that we remind each other, right? So that none of us forgets that this is how we can make change, and that when we work hard together, it is actually possible. We have to keep that in mind during those tough fights. So, you know that you asked an activist to come speak, so you know that I'm not just going to pat you on the back and tell you what you have to do next. Because the work is never over, right? And our mistake is ever believing that the work is over. Because if we think, okay, we've crossed off all the victories, we're about to lose and backtrack on some of them. And it also means we're not looking in the right places. That if we think all the victories are won, then maybe we're not being broad enough about who we're fighting for and who our community includes. Because over the past year, while we've been fighting for the Affordable Care Act, there have been a group of women who aren't included in the Affordable Care Act, undocumented women, for one group. And while we did win and we did prevail on the Violence Against Women Act, there was a provision that was taken out that would have protected immigrant women. So that's the community I want to ask us to really search for ways to stand with them now, because there's a big fight in Congress right now on immigration reform. And we have a good start in that the provision that was taken out of the Violence Against Women Act was about U visas. Are folks familiar with U visas? Okay. These are visas that allow undocumented women who are victims of violent crimes to be able to stay in the country and receive the services and support that they and their children need in exchange for them participating and cooperating with law enforcement, which in the end benefits all of us because it reduces rates of violence in our communities. So each year, we've been hitting the cap on these visas. And that means that women who've been coming forward bravely and standing up to their abuser and saying, I'm reaching out for help and I'm willing to help make sure that this person is prosecuted, have not been able to access these visas, have been being turned away. So that provision increasing the number of those visas was taken out of the Violence Against Women Act for some good strategic reasons, but we have to make sure that's included in immigration. And it is in the Senate bill right now, but it was a controversial provision before, it'll be a controversial provision again. So here's where you have the best opportunity as folks who are from some more conservative states, or let me correct my phrasing there. Some states that are represented by some more conservative individuals, because that does not represent everyone in the state. You have an opportunity to really have an impact by calling your representatives. You know, my California ladies are on board. So if you're able to reach out and make sure that the U visa provisions are included in immigration reform, I really see this as our responsibility as we have fought these battles for women over the last year to make sure that that means all women, right? You know, I spoke to a number of groups during Women's History Month. I talked a lot about the unique needs of women in the immigration system. And I would sometimes have people say, I thought you were going to talk about women's rights. And you just kind of have to say, but women's rights means all women. And it means women in the immigration system, and it means LGBT women and their unique concerns. And we have to make sure that we're always fighting for all women. We're always standing with every one of our sisters. And I know this is a room that believes that in their hearts and will take up this fight. Because the other fight that we have in immigration reform for our immigrant sisters is about their health care. We know that the Affordable Care Act has not been open in all of the different benefits that it has to undocumented women. The plan that's on the table right now for the pathway to citizenship, we've heard a lot, right, about this pathway to citizenship. That pathway is going to take about 10 years for a lot of people. And while you're on that pathway, fully documented to be here, working documented, fully paying your taxes, but not able to access any benefits from that. And that includes things like tax breaks to be able to afford insurance on the exchanges, or to be able to have access to Medicaid or Medicare or services for you and your family. That's not right. That's not fair that we're asking folks to buy in, to participate in our society, to be part of our communities, but that we're not going to protect them in the way that we protect every member of our community. So, and for many of those women, when they get to the end of that 10 years on that pathway, they've got another 5 years to go of the 5-year bar. Think about, I know many of you, I'm sure, have had family members touched by things like breast cancer, cervical cancer, many different types of health concerns. Think about what difference it makes at 15 years. 15 years without a screening or something like that. The number of lives that's going to have a terrible impact on, that delay. So I really see this as our time to say that the last year and everything that we've accomplished for women's health and everything that we've fought for women was about all women. And we will continue to fight for all women. And then right now we're going to stand up with our sisters from immigrant communities and make sure that they have access to things like U visas and to various health protections, including the Affordable Care Act, while they're on that pathway to citizenship. And that, ladies, is a fight I'm looking forward to being in with all of you, because I definitely don't want you on the other side of the fight. So I really think these are some challenges we can take on, we can make a compelling case for, and we can do something amazing for 11 million people in this country right now who are undocumented. So I look forward to being part of that fight for another year and many years to come. And again, congratulations, happy anniversary. You are a formidable force, and I thank you for all of the good work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That was fantastic. We're so glad that you're here. And so Sandra is now going to run off and board a plane, and we're going to take a little break and let you guys enjoy your refreshments and each other's company, and we'll reconvene in a few minutes and start the rest of our program and watch a couple of videos and listen to the rest of our amazing speakers. So thank you so much. No? All right, I think we're ready to get back with our program. We're going to do a few more speakers. We are, well, I'll give everybody a chance to get back to their seats. All right, we're going to start with our next speaker, which is Courtney Mills from the Fair Elections Legal Network, and we are excited to have you here. We are very excited to hear what you have to say. We have a wide variety of speakers today. We're trying to hit a lot of different angles of women's rights and of activism, and so with no further ado, here's Courtney Mills. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, first I just want to thank Unite Women for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I do work in voting rights, but before that I actually worked with Hey Roth Pro-Choice Virginia. So being here today is really exciting for me. I'm a big supporter of women's rights and was actually in that before I transferred over to voting rights. So specifically I work for the Fair Elections Legal Network. And we are a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We are based out of Washington, D.C., but we work nationwide to break down barriers to both registration and voting. And we focus specifically on underrepresented groups within the American electorate. So traditionally, that is students, low-income voters, and racial and language minority voters. So women's rights, I know we sort of think in terms of women's right to vote, that has already been decided. But unfortunately, it really hasn't. There are battles going on across the country to make it harder for people to vote. And inevitably, that will include women. So when you have something like in Florida, where we had HB 1355, it was a law passed in 2011, cut early voting in half. You may have seen the results of that on the news in 2012. People were waiting in line to vote until 1 a.m. So inevitably, when you have a law that is suppressing the rights of many to vote, women are going to get sort of tangled up within that mess. Specifically, some of the bills that we're seeing across the country will have a greater impact on women than they will on men. And I think it's something that a lot of people actually don't really realize. So just as a couple examples, voter ID bills are sort of the voter suppression du jour. Everyone is passing them, and they vary depending on state law. Some of them are a little more strict than others. If you have a strict photo ID law that requires a government ID, there's different background information that you may have to provide to a state. If you're a man, you're born, a lot of times, get your name, it's on your birth certificate. That's your only name going forward for the rest of your life. A lot of times, women will change their name through marriage, through divorce, maybe another marriage, maybe another divorce. It really depends. And so a lot of times, women who are trying to get these photo IDs are actually having to produce multiple documents when a man would just be able to present one. There's also what we refer to as sort of non-strict voter ID laws. And in those laws, a lot of times you can have either a utility bill, a paycheck, an employee ID card. And there are a lot of women where all of the bills are in their husband's name. Maybe they stay home and take care of the kids, so they don't have a paycheck. They don't have an employee ID card. And so the list of possible IDs for these women is greatly narrowed. And so even though on its face, this law looks as though it's fair, it applies equally to all, it's actually doing a lot to suppress the votes of women in some of these states. Now, a sort of unique twist that has become the new focus is suppressing the rights of students to vote. We know that the earlier you get started being involved in the democratic process, registering people, voting, working at the polls, the earlier you get started, the more likely you are to continue voting throughout the course of your life. And we know that they don't really want students voting. And sometimes they blatantly come out and say it. For example, in New Hampshire, we had people saying, we don't really want students voting. They don't really know what they're talking about. They vote with their hearts. They're not voting with their minds. Really, they say these things. So we know that more women than men are going to college, are pursuing higher education. And so when you have bills that are targeting students, you're targeting a large portion of young women in this country. So we have bills going forward in states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Tennessee, saying that student IDs cannot be valid voter ID. It's a state institution of higher learning, and in some instances, the teachers, the professors who work at these institutions can use their IDs from that school to vote, but the students cannot. And so we're looking at students being targeted through ID laws, but now we have a new twist in North Carolina. So North Carolina has decided that they're going to pin student voters against their parents. So North Carolina, for those of you who don't know, has a lot of colleges. It's somewhat overwhelming. And there are a lot of students who choose to stay in state. They have a plethora of opportunities to get higher education. And so they go, and the Supreme Court has told them that they have a right to register and vote in their college community, which makes sense when you think about it. They live there, they pay taxes, many of them have jobs, many of them will stay in their college communities after they graduate, and it's their constitutional right to register and vote there. In North Carolina, if a student would like to register and vote where they go to school, their parents will no longer be able to claim them as a dependent on their taxes. And would anyone like to take a guess as to how much that is per student? I'll give you a hint, it's a lot. $2,500 per student. So imagine being a young woman who is excited, she's going to register to vote for the first time, and you get a call from your parents saying, well, you better not register to vote where you go to college because that's going to cost us money. That's a decision and a conversation that's going to be had if this law passes that's going to affect these women for the rest of their lives, because we know the earlier you get started, the more likely you are to continue. And it's important that we engage people and our youth, and especially our young women, because most of the people, I would assume everyone in this room, probably votes. I would hope in every election. I would hope. And we all think, well, my friends vote, and everyone I know votes, and I talk to my family and they vote. And the truth is that there are actually a lot of women around the country who don't. And it's both young women and older women. So we know that for women who are unmarried, 39% of eligible unmarried women are not registered to vote. That makes up 28% of the unregistered voters in this country. So that's your friend, your neighbor, your coworker. It's someone who you probably don't realize isn't registered. And we know that we've been doing a lot to encourage young women to get out to the polls, but in 2012, young women actually made up a smaller percentage of the electorate than they did in 2008. So their voting power actually shrank a little bit in 2012. So we need to really focus on building those numbers up and getting these women engaged, and it's not just for presidential elections. We're going to be hearing about a lot of issues today, and a lot of them are decided at a state and local level. And so it's easy to get people excited. Sure, it's a presidential election. It's 2008, it's 2012. I'm excited. I'm going to go register voters, get them out to the polls. But the people who are making the decisions, the people who may close down your health clinics, the people who are voting about your insurance coverage, those people are elected in off years, usually. Virginia is a perfect example. We have elections every year. It's really fun. And so we can look at the turnout numbers from 2008 to 2009. Now, we know a lot of people who were elected in 2009 have played a very large role in a lot of the battles that women have fought in Virginia. So we look at the 2008 numbers of women who registered and went and voted, and out of those women, only 52% of them went and voted in 2009. So 48% of those women stayed home. Didn't go vote, didn't have their voice heard, and they've been dealing with the consequences ever since. So it's important that we not just engage young women to vote in presidential elections. We need to encourage everyone to be voting in every single election, in most most states that will not be every year, like it is in Virginia. But this year we have an opportunity in Virginia and in New Jersey to make sure that we get those turnout numbers up, because even not just specifically looking at women, we have a problem of people not turning out in the off-year elections. And so overall in the state of Virginia in 2008, we had 74% voter turnout. We only had 40% turnout in 2009. And so these people who play a much bigger role in your day-to-day life, far fewer people are actually electing them. And the people who are making these decisions aren't really having to answer to anyone, because no one's turning out to the elections where they're elected. So we need to make sure that we're getting people engaged, we're registering people, and talking to the young women. Talk to your neighbors, to your coworkers, to your friends, to your family. Encourage them to vote in off-year elections. Go out and register people. Don't wait until there's a big presidential campaign to convince people to go and vote. Because the people who are deciding whether it's going to be harder to vote are getting elected every day in this country. And when they make it harder to vote, they make it harder for women to vote as well. And that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind. It's not just this group or that group. It affects everyone. And it's only through everyone in this room going out into their communities and engaging all of these people that we can really protect voting rights going forward, which in turn is going to make all of these other battles a lot easier. So I just ask that you engage with your community. If anyone would like information about our organization, we have papers outside, or I will be here all night. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to hear the others.
Thank you so much. That was extremely informative and mildly enraging, because it just makes you really step back and think about the status of things. And we're going to put bios of all of the speakers up on our websites, and information about all the organizations that everyone represents. So if you don't get a chance to get information here, you can pull it from our webpage and our website later. And now we're going to move on to our next speaker, who has done activism, again, in many roles, with many different organizations. And we are thrilled to have her, Vicki Rowan.
Hi everybody, it's good to see you. I'm Vicki Rowan, and I don't have a specific title, and that could be probably because I'm still a student. On May 10th and 11th, I'm about to graduate with a political science and a social work degree. And then the day after Memorial Day, I go into my Master's of Social Work program, so I'm going to be pretty busy. So I don't have an official title. I do a lot of work with the Richmond Now group. I'm the political action chair, and I'm the legislative director of lobbying for the Virginia chapter of the National Org for Women. So we're busy all the time doing different stuff. But what I came here to talk to y'all today about was specifically to take a step back for a second and kind of take a look at sort of the media issue that we've got going on today, specifically, nationwide, but we're going to talk about Virginia. If you take a step back and look at our media, you see that if you go up the chain and what company owns what company, and this company owns this company, and this company merged back in 1998 with this company, and this company did this, you realize that there's really only like 5 companies that own, right? Did I get that right? I know that I've been to a couple of seminars where people have told me. So there's like 5 companies that own like essentially 99% of all media everywhere. So, us social activists, we kind of like take a step back and we look at that and we're like, wow, well, we've got quite a monster to work against, because the media, the mainstream media, their goal, their objective doesn't necessarily have to be to report facts and to report news. They like to report this side of the issue versus this side of the issue because they like to make money. So they like to report, what's going to sell. So a lot of times when we see our efforts, at Board of Health meetings or at City Council or at school board or wherever we may be, a lot of times you're going to see, the issue with this group versus this group, rather than there were hundreds of people on this side and there were maybe like 30, 40 people on this side. You know, you're not going to see the accurate representation of what's going on, and you're definitely not going to see any of the pertinent facts. You're definitely not going to see any of that. So what can we do as activists to kind of change the game? And that's where social media comes in. And so there are many, many different types of social media, and there are people sitting in this crowd that are better at it than me. So please feel free to pop in at any time if there's something I'm missing. So I'd like to, how many people in this room right now belong to a Facebook group? Okay, so almost everybody in this room. How many people have liked a page? Okay, how many people have joined a Facebook event? Yeah, okay, so everybody knows that these tools are out there, and you know, whether it be, oh, you know, someone's graduation party, or whether it be, hey, we're rallying at the Capitol steps tomorrow, you better be there. Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and Pinterest and all these different social media avenues that we have can really make a difference. And you see that especially during the 2011 General Assembly session, where there were literally hundreds of thousands of people rallying at the General Assembly. And, you know, how do you think the message got out? You know, it was through more than just one avenue. You know, the mainstream media oftentimes, even if we send out a press release, you know, it's up in the air whether or not they're going to show up. But, you know, you get your word of mouth out, you get your email out, you get your Facebook out, you get your Twitter out, you get your Pinterest out. You start figuring out different ways to communicate with people. So I'm going to talk to you all today about a couple different useful new techniques, or just kind of insights that maybe people know, but just kind of to bring it a little bit more to light. So everybody who has a Facebook group. Now, a Facebook group is a really important tool because this is a way for everybody in your group together to be able to post and interact one-on-one. It's different from a Facebook page because people like Facebook pages. There are admins, so only specific people can make large posts. Other people, if you're posting, say you like something, it'll go onto the side of the page and recent posts by others. So sometimes, you know, if you're not an admin on that page, your post may or may not get seen by the majority of people because it's just not out there. So there are different techniques and different skills for each different type of social media. So when we're doing when we're doing a Facebook event, let's say we're trying to get everybody to come out to a rally in a month and a half, right? So what are some ways to kind of make sure that more people than just the people that we invite? Because you know how many people invite us to events. How many people have at least 10 Facebook events right now that they haven't checked? You know, half the room's hands go up. Yes, double hands go up. You know, I've got over 20, so I'm guilty. But so not everybody sees when you invite them to an event. So how does your event stand out? Because everybody's getting invited to different events on all different kinds of levels. How does your event stand out? Well, the more often you post in that event, the more often your event shows up on people's newsfeed. You all know how on Facebook, I guess this is my side, so your side. So you know how on the upper right-hand corner, and every time somebody does anything, there's another post that goes up, right? Well, sometimes if that post kind of sounds interesting, don't you click on it? Oh, is there a picture of that? That kind of sounds funny. Let me click on it, and you'll see, oh, there's an event. Let me click on it. So even if you're just posting a picture, or if you're just posting, hey guys, I'm really excited for this event. I hope you all will be able to come out. Every time you're posting something on a Facebook event, it's going out, and some people are seeing it, which means you're engaging more people than just the initial Facebook invite. On the same note, when you're doing group postings and things of that nature, when you have say you have a petition and you're trying to get petition signatures, you know how everybody has a news feed and that comes up, that's the main thing, you've got your own profile, but then you've got your home page. How to get posts to show up more on those news feeds, you kind of have to call your friends up. The more people you get to like a post, the longer and higher up on people's newsfeed it goes. And that's something that not everybody knows. So the more times, and not only just liking, but if you get people to share the same event, the higher up and the more often it shows up on people's news feeds. So not only are you creating traffic on your page, but you're creating traffic on the whole news feed. I don't even know how Facebook decides who you get to see or not, but it matters if you're getting people to like and share things as well. So taking it, and it only works if you're doing it around the same time. That's the key, is that you have to, is that right? Is that wrong? Oh, that's right, yeah. It's just really tricky. I was like, wait a second, I don't know. You two have my back on all of this. But so it's kind of tricky because you have to really be like, hey guys, we need to all share this at like 9:55 or, you know, in the next 10-minute frame to get it to go up farther. But it really makes a difference because that really does show more people, you know, your events and your actions. On the same note, when there's a difference between people joining groups and you know, how many people check their groups every single day? Yeah, not as many hands go up, right? So there's a difference between the groups that you're a part of and the individual pages that people have, their personal profiles, right? So take a second to think about this. You know, kind of gather. You know, there's a bunch of different groups here. You know, I'm part of the Now group, Richmond Now. So I have to think, who are my main leaders in the Richmond Now chapter? If I share this on somebody else's page, who are their social connects? Who's going to see that, and are they likely to share it or, you know, at least engage in some way? So you have to figure out, you know, who should you share personally on your Facebook page? Is that going to, you know, how is that going to extend out to other people? And, you know, not just I'm going to share this on my group and all my other groups. I'm going to share this on an event page, but actually figuring out who's critical in the movement. And so finally, last thing, Facebook isn't everything. Twitter's really big. It's really important. I don't know because I don't have a Twitter, but I know that if you have a Twitter account and you put a little hashtag, which is it's the number sign. It's the number sign, and then you write, you know, whatever your tagline is. It goes from your Facebook to your Twitter, so it's a way to connect the two together. So you're not having to go onto your Facebook and your Twitter at the same time and do those things. Also, Pinterest, a lot of times people don't read things, but people will love to look at things. So try and figure out ways that you can promote your events on a graphic and share it. Yeah, it's like, you know, I use Paint sometimes. You know that old Microsoft Paint? Sometimes that's all I got. So, but you know, if you make it a graphic, it really spreads a little bit farther. It's so much easier to hit share than it is to read an entire email, write down the important parts, and resend it off. So I leave you with those kind of couple of key hints, and I hope that, you know, in the future with everybody and what we're doing, we'll get there, because I know we will. We got a great group of ladies.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Those were some excellent tips, and all of these speeches will be available on our YouTube page later. So if you heard something and were thinking, what was it that she said? That was an awesome Facebook tip. You can go back and see it later on our YouTube page. Okay, well, we're going to go to our next speaker, someone we are thrilled to have here. Linda Young. She is the president of the National Women's Political Caucus, and she also has an exciting new, relatively new White House position that I will let her tell you about. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today. Karen, thanks so much for working on this and inviting me to be with you. I met Karen and several of you in the room. Now, some of you I've met before, but met Karen and a few from Unite Women during the suffrage weekend. We were in Washington, D.C., and there were 20,000 women marching to commemorate the original suffrage march. It was very exciting. The National Women's Political Caucus was established in 1971. A long time ago. We had some exciting women who really worked on that thought of establishing a multi-partisan organization that would recruit, train, and help elect qualified women to political office. And we thought that was very important. Now, I've been asked today to talk about an issue that's important to the caucus and to Unite Women. But I want to give you just one more thing about caucus to share, and that is National Women's Political Caucus is part of a number of collaborations, as I know Unite Women is as well. And the way that we will work together and unify and collaborate, we make our actions go farther. So instead of doing this in silos or worried about turf, we work together. And I just want to tell you how important I think that is, and I thank you for what you're doing. So, I was asked to talk a little bit about the ERA. Now, I know that most of you are very familiar with the ERA and many aspects of the ERA, and probably know more than anyone we could find on the street today, that's for sure. However, in thinking about the ERA, there were some things that came to mind to me. It was in 1923 that Alice Paul, who was a woman suffrage leader and an attorney, she wrote the Equal Rights Amendment. And it was important to her. And it really rang true to a number of women. And so in 1923, it was first introduced into Congress. Hooray! Well, my mother was 2 years old at that time. My mother lived her whole life, and the ERA was not part of the Constitution. I don't want to see that happen to others. Between 1923 and 1972, the ERA was introduced every year in Congress. Finally, in 1972, by a 2/3 vote in the Senate and the House, it was passed. And then it went on to the states for ratification. Now, according to our process, it takes actually 38 states to ratify a constitutional amendment. We were 3 states short, and there was a time limit put on. Well, in 1972, my son was 2 years old. You're getting where I'm going, okay? I want him to see it. It's important. We were talking about it the other day, and he said, but, Mother, don't you think that everyone believes that the ERA was passed and that it's ratified? Don't you think everyone believes that? And I said, many people may. That's why it's so important for each of us to remind everyone, whether it's our family, our neighbors, people that we work with, the groups that we work with on political activities. It's important to keep it at the forefront, to talk about it. And of course, even though he's a guy, I did raise him as a feminist, so he said, well, you're right, we'll just have to do better. However, we're not there yet. Currently in the Congress, we have 2 methods that are being tried, 2 approaches to pass the ERA. One is the same constitutional effort, which would be starting over for the ratification. The other one, and we have both Senate and House sponsors in both, and that would be the other one, is for removing the time limit. There's been a lot of legal comment that having an artificial time limit on ratification really is not appropriate, and so there's some effort to look at that. So we do have 2 ways that there could be passage of the ERA once and for all. Whichever way we do it, we need to make sure that it happens. And I commend Unite Women to your commitment of being there, showing up, and saying, we're not going to stop until the ERA is passed. asked me really what it means. I mean, why do you pass the ERA? We really have rights. Even we have, under the 14th Amendment, and gosh knows that was after the Civil War that was added, but it was added because of race, for non-discrimination, and it was added for equal protection of the laws. But guess what? There's a word in there that's listed when they wrote that part of the amendment, the 14th. They put in the word male. Okay? And in 2010, Justice Scalia said that the 14th Amendment does not refer to protection of sex under the law. So women are not equally protected. It's clear. Even Scalia knows. Sorry. But what I'd like to do is ask you, each of you, in what you are doing today, tomorrow, and until we pass the ERA, continue to do what you're doing. You might even think about pointing to, there's a young woman that we met a few years ago. She's an actress and writer, director, producer. Her name is Kamala Lopez, and she has established some pretty cool short videos using celebrities. They're usually pretty funny. Some are fairly irreverent, but they do get young people's attention. And that's one of the things that we need to do, just like, when you talk to college-age women, oftentimes when you ask about it, they say, oh no, there's no discrimination anymore. They haven't realized that it's gone underground. It's a little more subtle than it might have been at one time. So I ask you now to redouble your efforts, continue what you are doing. Let's all work together. Let's work with groups like the National Council of Women's Organizations or even Her Votes. Now, how many of you know about Her Votes? Hope you do. It stands for Health and Economic Rights of Women. The funny thing about Her Votes, we had a press conference on March 1st a year ago. We had it in Washington. All 52 organizations of the Her Votes Coalition were there represented. Just one or two from each organization. But we were at the National Press Club. And there were a few of us who were getting to speak. And when I took the mic and I was looking at the media out there and them making notes and had their cameras and so forth, I was trying very hard not to laugh out loud. Because what I was thinking to myself was, when they figure out that our coalition of Her Votes with non-duplicated membership represents 35 million women, they're going to be scared to death. And so that's what we have to do. Scare them to death. Keep doing it and pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think a lot of people are reinvigorated and spending a lot of passion about the ERA. So I look forward to the day when it is passed and we can all celebrate that. Next we're going to show a video about our recent Unite Against Rape campaign, and we're going to hear from our Executive Vice President of Operations, Patricia Gill. So we'll take a little break, set up the video. If you guys want to get refills of your drinks or whatever, run to the restroom. We'll reconvene here in about 5 minutes.